everybody to our WAN-IFRA webinar series. My name is Nicole Frankenhauser, and I'm the advisory coordinator here at WAN-IFRA based in Frankfurt, Germany. I'm thrilled that we have a huge number of international attendees today. I see some from Europe, South America, and Asia so far. We're at 30 people and growing, so thank you so much for spending your time with us today. On behalf of WAN-IFRA, I'm excited to bring to the audience a webinar featuring our very own WAN-IFRA colleague, Kalle Jungkvist, for the webinar 2018 in Paid Content. Today we'll be addressing the following topics in our live discussion: reducing churn, data and your users, and much, much more. We invite the audience to join us in the conversation. Once Kalle concludes his presentation, we will take questions from our audience members. To submit your questions, search at the bottom right of your control panel for a box that is labeled questions. Please type in your question and at any point during the webinar, and we can ask it to Kalle during the Q&A round. Today's webinar will be very interactive. I am joined in our WAN-IFRA Frankfurt office today by my colleague, Dean Roper, Director of Insights for WAN-IFRA. He'll be teeing off the webinar with questions for Kalle about reader revenue trends, and then we will host the Q&A session with the audience. A little bit more about our webinar star today. Kalle has nearly 20 years of experience in digital strategy and business development. He was editor-in-chief of Aftonbladet New Media when the Swedish paper launched its first digital subscription model in 2003, one of the earliest to do so in Europe. He currently serves as a senior advisor to the Schibsted Media Group in Sweden and as an expert advisor for WAN-IFRA. Kalle is also a trainer in our 6-course e-learning program on digital revenues called the Media Management Accelerator. He teaches course 2, Paid Content and Reader Revenue, and it also features case studies from European publishers Media in Norway and Aftonbladet in Sweden. And don't miss out, Kalle will be at some of our upcoming global WAN-IFRA events, and all are focused on paid content strategy. So first up, our eRev group will meet in Berlin and Hamburg this March for some energizing sessions on marketing and pricing. Following eRev, we're going to host our annual Digital Media Europe conference in Copenhagen, Denmark, and Kalle will be leading a workshop called Digital Subscriptions, Churn Rate Remedies on the 9th of April. Also, Kalle will be a speaker at our annual World News Media Congress taking place in Estoril the 6th through 8th of June. We hope to see you there, and for more information about these events and to see Kalle in person, visit events.wan-ifra.org. And of course, don't forget to join our live Twitter discussion with the hashtag ReaderRev. And now, without further ado, I'd like to formally introduce Dean Roper and Kalle Jungkvist. We're ready to hear from you guys, so take it away.
Thanks, Nicole. Hi, Kalle. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Up in a cold black hole in Stockholm.
Well, glad you're here. I just want to say one thing, mentioned that WAN-IFRA is actually at this moment researching, and we're doing a report on reader revenue. And of course, we leaned on Kalle for some help about that report. Hopefully it'll be ready in the next few months. And one of the things that we talked about in that, what we're focusing on in that report is about churn. And that a lot of that had to do with a number of people we spoke with, but also especially Kalle. And so I guess that leads into our first question, Kalle. Why is it so important in 2018 that you think that publishers that are in the middle of their reader revenue strategies, why are they focusing so much on churn?
It's because of our history, I think. The history of paid content for most newspapers in Europe is around 3 to 6 years old. And we have learned quite a lot during this period. And of course, our main focus to a high degree for many newspapers has been volume, really chasing volume. And that is, of course, important, and it has been important. But we have also developed a different model, the meter model to a more hybrid model. with premium parts that is driving conversion. But I've seen in so many newspapers when I have had different discussions that they have extremely high churn. And that is partly because they are so focused on volume, and the different campaigns for free for 2 months or just $1 for 4 months or whatever has been driving quite a lot of churn. And when you see newspapers that have a churn rate, monthly churn rate around 15%, I mean, that is not really good in the long run. That means that the average lifetime of a subscriber is more or less only half a year. So you have to change more or less most of them for twice a year. And if you look at it more in a segmented way, you would probably see that many newspapers have a core audience, a core subscriber audience, and on top of that, they are chasing a lot of new subscribers, and a lot of the old subscribers go away. So I've seen in many newspapers that has reached a plateau where more or less the same amount of new subscribers, it is the same amount that are leaving. Mm-hmm. And that is, of course, one extremely important part of it. The other one, I think, is it's not really about churn, but it points out that we in our industry need to have a much faster way of product development to really drive engagement. And engagement is, I mean, the key issue if you want to have your subscribers for a long time. So I can come back to that, but I think we need to, in many ways, have a better user experience, have a better CRM tactics, go towards more personalization in order to drive engagement. That is the most important thing. And the focus on chasing new subscribers has been on cost of product development and driving engagement. That is my main reason why I think it's so important.
Mm-hmm. Is there a certain percentage of churn, though, that you have benchmarked for publishers to aim for?
I mean, it's definitely depending on how you count it. You have one kind of churn that is normally not counted in the funnel of buying a subscription. You could do a lot there. That is out of it. Then, of course, you have special percentage of churn in your different campaigns. And then, of course, if you have your core subscribers, what is the churn there? When I say 15%, that has been counted on the total of the core and people getting in from different kinds of campaigns. I would say 15, it's not so common. But I mean, quite a lot of newspapers lies around 10, 11%. That is still quite a lot. Mm-hmm. I would say you should aim, I don't know, you should get down to 5% to 6% or whatever, at least to have an average lifetime of a subscriber to 1.5 years, 1.5 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. But of course, it's important to get down the percentage of churn. It's more important to measure the daily active subscribers and how they engage, how you drive engagement once they have reached the tipping point and decides themselves to be subscribers.
Okay, so why don't we focus on that, actually those loyal users you're talking about in terms of how publishers can do a better job of engaging with them. Can you touch on some of the ways maybe that they can?
Yes, I would. If you could take up, show the slide that I have sent. I have only sent one slide. If you could show that.
All right, audience.
Okay. Yeah. Here is a very simple engagement analysis. And it is, the first picture to the left is what is driving visitors to a news site. And that, of course, differs between local, national, or whatever. But this is a typical one. It's mainly breaking news. You want to be updated with what is happening, and then you choose some other elements that you are especially interested in. If you go to the next one, you could see what is driving conversion. And that is not the same that is driving people coming to your app or news site. And there we, of course, have learned quite a lot. What converts? How should we maximize that? How do we change our content? How do we present it in our apps or on our website? And then you go to the next step. Then you find the guys that have been subscribers. They have another way of engaging in on the news site. And of course, if we have focused so much on conversion and not really analyzing what is driving engagement among our subscribers and segment that into quite a lot of different kind of behavioral parts, it's very hard to find what can we do to drive engagement. Mm-hmm. And I would say there are a couple of elements of that. Of course, the most important is our journalistic content, our storytelling, how we present it, how we do it, how engaging that is. But it's also that I can find what I'm especially interested in. I mean, especially in an app where the navigation, for most people don't use the navigation. They follow the flow of news and journalistic storytelling. And by the way, app is by far one of the best anti-churn channels you could have, because always people are engaging much more in an app than on a mobile site. So one of the first parts is driving people to your app. But how do they find what they are especially interested in an app? Scroll and scroll and scroll. That is one kind of user experience you will go into. Mm-hmm. The other is, how do you relate to the brand, to the journalist, to different parts of it? And that is more a CRM marketing part that you have to be focused on. And also segment it, so it really comes to what you are interested in. And all this comes to what I say is starting much more to have personalized experience in many different ways. So altogether, to drive engagement, I think that our industry, need to work much more of product development in order to really understand and drive better engagement, and in that way keeping our subscribers a longer time.
Yeah, so you would say the user experience side goes hand in hand with engagement in terms of the effort that needs to go into publishers creating retention, especially on mobile.
Yes, especially on mobile, and we want people to use our app, to download our app and use our app. And I mean, that is a very crucial point in terms of volume as well. Reuters had an investigation that said that a normal user only have 1.5 on average use app. And of course, perhaps they have a local one and a national one. We don't know on average, quite a lot of people, but you find to be the app is extremely important for volume and engagement, because engagement is much more in an app. But if you look of the first user experience, I just checked some of my apps today. I went into New York Times. It's exactly the same. I can't even see that, not my name in tiny letters, nothing. Washington Post, the same. A lot of other ones in Sweden, okay, I can see my name because I'm logged in. That's the total user experience of being a subscriber. I would say, and of course, in some ways you could personalize on some apps what kind of notifications or alerts you want. And then it's not narrow, it's sports, business, general news, whatsoever. That's more or less what you could personalize. If we, on the other hand, look, for example, on the example Omni, that is a Schibsted app, that I would say takes this quite a lot of steps further. There I could follow special news events. I could follow a special football team or a special political party or whatever. And then easily it's shown in the flow of news. I click on it and I got all the articles if I want that from that news story that I'm interested in. That is one thing. So I think that to really focus on segmenting and using different data points to analyze the different segments of subscribers, you could also find a way to have a more dynamic experience in the app. That you have a section where from your behavior you could have special kind of premiums articles that we think in your segment would be interesting from you, and of course some surprises as well. That is one part more that you come closer to it, and then you could click on whatever that you are following and get all the results from there. That is okay. It's technically, as I understand, quite complicated, but it's a small step towards that. Mm-hmm. So the user experience is more or less the same. You don't really know if you're reading a premium article or not. In many cases, you don't understand what the subscription really is worth. Mm-hmm. So working with these kind of personalization and different kinds of way of telling what the subscription is all about is so important in growing engagement. And of course, also to adjust what kind of content the editorial part should prioritize, depending on the segments that you find most interesting and that you want to prioritize. Mm-hmm. So that kind of deeper analysis, product development, and better ways of have a slight kind of personalization, I think is the best ways to drive engagement.
Okay. Let's. What are some of the warning signs you think that kind of indicate there's about to be churn? Are there some stop signs that publishers need to be absolutely aware of?
Yeah, but there are of course a lot of signs, especially in terms of how do you pay? Do you have auto pay or whatever? Where did you come from, Facebook, or are you coming from? Have an offer from a subscription of the print newspapers. All these kind of things are should be know that the churn is much higher if you have old paper invoice, if you don't have auto pay or whatever. That is one part. The other part is to a very high degree engagement, and that is in terms of time spent every day, or however you measure it. Of course, paid views and started video streams, and how you react and interact in the app or on the platform. So the main KPIs for the main one to find if you are going to churn is that the activity goes down. And I think that is also very interesting, because I think this work to start engaging and to minimize churn is really starting when you the first day you subscribe. I mean, you need to have a week of onboarding process, showing what the subscription really is all about, what kind of premium articles or segments that could be interesting, telling how you could personalize. I mean, what kind of newsletter do you want a mix of newsletters that are made especially for you or your segment? All these kind of things onboarding process, where you during the first week get notifications, get emails telling about how you could use and get maximum use out of your subscription. There it starts. If you don't have that process, it's not good, of course. And then, of course, you could adjust if you know the subscriber before, because it's a registered subscriber, or you could follow the patterns. Then you could have elements in the newsletter that you send, of course, that is especially interested for this guy because of how he or she has behaved. So working with these kind of almost from the beginning is extremely interesting. And that is to reduce the challenge of less activity. Mm-hmm. But I would say the most important warning signal is less frequency, less page views, less engagement. And then, of course, you have to act, and you have to have a program for that.
Okay. Why don't we transition into the second part of this equation about data. So what kind of data points do you think are especially important for publishers working on this?
It depends on what you mean. Of course, behavioral data, to analyze that and segment that and make that understandable for journalists and business developers is, of course, extremely interesting. Otherwise, it's more or less what you want to know about the person. I could have comments on that, but I mean, it is, of course, email. If you get a mobile number, name, address, sex, and where you live. And especially in an app where that they also allow geolocation, mainly because of advertising issues, that you could have local advertising in the app. More or less that combined with behavioral data is the most important. And I would say in the stage where many newspapers are today, I think the focus should be more on really understanding the behavioral data and make that very transparent for the different parts of the editorial and the business parts.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess those data points make perfect sense, but is there obviously a challenge, or how do publishers go about persuading those users to get that data? What are some of the ways you've seen that are?
Yes, of course. But I mean, you could build in that in the subscription model that to be a subscriber, you have to at least get some of that, give that away. You could also use these kinds of personalization or functionalities before being a subscriber, but we need you to register. There are different strategies in different newspapers for that. In terms of geolocation, that in the app, of course, if you have your local weather, you have to tell where you are and allow geolocation. That has been quite a good driver in Sweden when we have tried that. And there are also, if you want some local news, could be curated or whatever, you have to give your location. So you have to work with different kinds of extra functionality of better service to convince to give more data, I would say.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier the role that CRM plays also in the in the journey of engagement. What role does CRM play? Obviously it plays a big role here in data. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of a publisher's CRM practices?
Yes, but I mean normally the relationship, well, one important part in the relationship between the subscriber and the brand is through the CRM team, in terms of newsletters, promotions, notifications about things that are personalized, that are of interest for a different subscriber. Working with that, learning from that, for what is working, what is not working. That is one kind of engagement. The other engagement is from a more journalistic point of view. For example, you need to be a subscriber to comment. You would like to involve people in polls about your own journalism, or invite them to take part of an investigation or whatever, if they have expertise in it. It is to find also journalistic relations to your subscribers, and to experiment and take how you could do that. But I mean, the main part is through the CRM team working with different segments of the users.
I'm going back here a little bit, but you're talking about the CRM, which is obviously a direct link to publishers and sort of the back end. Going back to the engagement side, what are some of the things you've seen that are effective in terms of like analog methods of phone calls, discounts, those sorts of things? Do those actually help to drive engagement? Reminders, tokens?
No, I mean, I don't have so much experience of newspapers, as far as I know, that are using, we are talking now mainly digital only subscribers that are using telemarketing for that.
Yeah. Calls and those sorts of things.
I know there are experiments around that and so on, but on the other hand, you could see if telemarketing is much more historically towards print, and especially when someone wants to stop the print subscriptions, telemarketing is, of course, extremely important. And you try to get a new offer, perhaps a digital offer. I don't know, but I've heard from the Schibsted Group that, okay, these kind of offers have a much higher churn rate than if you convert on the digital platforms. I don't know, to be exactly. I don't have any good examples of really using telemarketing. That should probably be in, supposedly, if you have a special bundle or a special offer where you could focus on persons that you know would be interesting of that, and try with the telemarketing.
Okay.
But I have not seen so many examples of that.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the marketing aspect and talk a little bit about Facebook and all this. And I mean, Facebook seems like it's there's some new news every day. So what are some of the more sophisticated ways that people can market their subscriptions? So, for example, on Facebook with well, you explain to us first of all, what is Facebook audience and how that might work?
Yeah, but I mean, there are some problems about that. I mean, generally, many or quite a few, at least, newspapers have been reluctant to give data away to Facebook, and also quite a lot have been focusing on getting traffic. And I mean, that is chasing reach, and I think from a business point of view, this is more or less a zero game. If you get people getting in and out on that way, it's not really helping the business. But if you use Facebook from a marketing perspective, especially if you use their custom audience possibility, you could use it, especially, I would say, for at least tests for subscription. And there are different ways of this. Of course, you could send, you could have the pixel, the Facebook pixel, integrated in all your or different parts of your site in order to identify them as a group and send them, for example, to Facebook and reach them through Facebook. For example, quite users that are really loyal but not subscribers, you could take whatever they are interested in one segment and have read 10 articles the last weeks on that segment. You could then send through the pixel, could you reach them with a paid post in Facebook? And there you could then show perhaps a trailer for a series of articles around this content, a special content that focused on this group, or and that the first one is free, and the second one you have to be a subscriber and using in that way. And I mean it is a very good tool in that way that you could choose whatever kind of content, whatever kind of segment, geo, age, and combine that with behavior on your own site, and then target them for special campaigns. Mm-hmm. So it's quite a sophisticated instrument. And the backside of that is, of course, that you give quite a lot of data away to Facebook. And as a main competitor on the advertising business, that is a problem. Historically, Schibsted, for example, has been very reluctant to do that, but we are now experimenting in Sweden. I don't know if, in Norway as well, I think, to use this in the best way and to see how it really works. Okay. On average, I could say to try to convert from just one article into being a subscriber has quite high churn. Quite a lot just goes for that and then leaves more or less immediately. That you could see. But if you could grab a person or a segment of users that are really interested in something, and you could engage them when they come to the app or your website with certain kinds of new content that would need their subscription. It's a way to get them further into a more deeper engagement. Mm-hmm. So there is not one solution. It's also here, at least from what I've heard from different publishers, it's experimentation, learning, see what works, and also in this case really focus not only on conversion but on churn. What happens? How long? What is the average lifetime value of such campaign? But we could see in some cases very good results in conversion, really good.
Okay, why don't we go to some audience questions now, and talking about Facebook, we'll go to our friend Greg Piachota, who actually has he wrote our Facebook monetization report. Greg is in attendance, and he asks this question. First, a comment. Many publishers have outsourced engagement features to external platforms, for example, users comment stories on Facebook rather than on the publisher sites. Now Facebook wants publishers to step up efforts to drive comments on its own platforms. Do you think these publishers should refrain from helping Facebook reclaim the conversations and move them to their own sites?
Yes, absolutely. I mean the main issue for us is to have as much engagement on our platform as possible. Of course, that is the core. The first core is to have as much direct traffic as possible. In Scandinavia, that is not such a big problem because the big news services has a very high percentage of direct traffic, and that is a strength. They are not really relying on Facebook traffic to get reach. Mm-hmm. But in terms of engagement, this is, of course, extremely important. I think that if you should have comments on articles and so on, it should be on our own platform. That is I'm not really an expert what the new Facebook offer is, but automatically I say we must have a focus on getting our subscribers and also our usual readers, users to engage on our own platforms. I don't know if that's an answer to your question, Greg.
I think that's fine. So I'm going to bounce around a little bit here. So I have a question from Derek. He says, with our experiments in personalization, we often see people get the idea, but don't really use it, like sorting or prioritizing news topics. However, if you ask for it, users always say personalization.
Yeah. I agree on that. If we talk about personalization, I have never been fond of a lot of personalization. I mean, we are a brand that people like because we help them to choose in many ways. And we are a trusted brand because we have editors to help them through the flow of news and what is important for that. And we also have a vision of our own, what we want to say that is important from a democratic way or the society or whatever. But in terms of getting a better user experience, I think it's very important to have elements of personalization, much more than most newspapers online or apps or whatever have today. Yeah. And I would say, yes, the experience, to answer the question with this background is, yes, there are quite a few using it, but that depends because you don't have a good onboarding process. If you have a better onboarding process, that you have at least to fill in it, to make some choices, people use it more. And I think it's still, of course, it's a minority that really uses it, where you yourself do it. But you could combine that with the behavior segmentation that on different parts in the app or on the website shows kind of premium content that we think your segment rather is interesting. Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of this. And also you get some quite good intention data from when people do this kind of personalization.
Okay.
But I think that should be a work in progress, and we must help our users to use it in terms of different ways of doing that through whatever means, newsletters or notifications, whatever.
Okay, we have another question from Javier. His question is, are there any publishers doing their own algorithm applied to their own content so that apps learn of subscriptions preferences over time? Have you heard of any such practice?
No, probably there is, but I haven't. But I mean, there are steps on the road in that way that Svenska Dagbladet, for example, using the Schibsted Media platform, the front page, the mix of that is totally driven by an algorithm. And that algorithm depends on the news value that the editor puts on the article or video, whatever, how long they think it will be of interest for people coming in. It's a combination of that about how many page views people that are reading the article and something more. It's a combination of that that makes the mix of Svenska Dagbladet's homepage. And of course, you could use that kind of algorithm, but driven by machine learning, as you propose, for subscribers to find different parts of the site to be only for them in that way. I think so. It's not a long step, but I have not heard it. Okay. I don't know if one else of the webinar people have heard any examples of that.
Well, it seems like the personalization issue has sparked some interest here. We have about four or five questions. Let me just get to this.
Yes.
Get to one. This is from Ludovic, and his question is: should personalization be a freemium offer or premium, or both? Some functions yes, and some not.
Oh, that's a good question. I've seen different ways of doing this depending on the strategy. I mean, the best, at least, is to register for it. But of course, I mean, it depends. Where are you in development of your subscription business, your advertising business? Where are you? Of course, I mean, this functionality of personalization is good for everybody, of course. And it's a way of perhaps driving loyalty and engagement to later be a subscriber. But I think at least to have that you have to register, so you get some, at least an email address and something more, where you upsell, so might be much better in following the behavior on it.
Okay.
But I've seen different solutions on that. You have to be a subscriber, you have to register, or it's more or less for everybody that you at least could have some kinds of personalized.
Okay. Another question on personalization from Anna. Her question is, she says, there's also an argument that social media does personalization much better than us, thus the whole bubble discussion. Maybe our core competences don't really lie in the personalization feature. What do you say about that?
No, but yes, but of course it's depending on what you mean. I mean, there is a bubble of, when we talk about a bubble, that is very much about opinion, columnists, point of political views, all these kind of things. But if you are more specially interested in Liverpool in football, or you're very interested in Apple or whatever, and you build a segment or part of your experience that give you quite a good news about Apple and Liverpool, that is kind of personalization that doesn't give a bubble out. I mean, in other ways, I mean, you have the total mix. As I said, I don't believe in total personalization. I think that is, for many reasons, I don't think it's would be a success, because people want to be surprised. They want to have different points of views in many ways, at least people that are using trusted brand media. And it also would be really dull, I would say.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from our friend Luke Redemakers. He says, hi, Kalle, do you have any interesting examples of community building projects creating a new, engaged, and sustainable digital public for newspaper brands?
I don't know what you mean with the community. You mean that really have a community of your own that interact and around the newspapers. I mean, there are different levels on that. We built that in Aftonbladet in 2006, 5, 6, 7, something like that. And I know in Norway, VG had a community as well. But that was, of course, we didn't have a chance when Facebook was strong 1 or 2 years later. But I would say, without knowing if there are any good examples of really building communities around a news brand on your own platform, that is. I mean, there is some kind of community on social media platforms, but on your own platforms, I don't know if there are any examples of that, but of course, if you could do it, it's a wet dream in terms of engagement and so on. I know, for example, one kind of communities that financial newspapers really build is it's communities around different stocks and tips about what you should invest in and so on. And it's a niche in that way, and that has been quite, at least historically, quite successful.
Okay, I think I'll give you one last question. Cecilia Campbell, who's working on a report, the Reader Revenue Report, she's been making a tour around around Sweden and Norway, and she just mentioned that many of the publishers she spoke with are testing like crazy, iterating, and these are, I think, mostly publishers that you could say are pretty advanced in their reader revenue strategies. So that kind of goes back to what you said earlier, Kalle, about product development. Would you say, especially looking at churn, there are all these different things, what would you say about the whole sort of culture of testing like crazy on all these different sorts of platforms and initiatives that publishers have going around reader revenue?
Yes, I mean, traditionally, in my history, we have had quite a lot of testing and learning, and be very quick to shut it down if it doesn't work. And I've seen quite a lot of newspapers doing that as well. But of course, to a certain degree, it's more costly today because of more the development of a platform or tech development. You need to really analyze it. You need data scientists to work on special scriptures or whatever. It is a little more problematic today. And for example, in Schibsted, this has been more or less partly centralized so that we learn from each other, and if someone is testing it's working, that others as well could use it, and you also have some common initiatives that we think in that case could be good for everybody. So to have a culture of testing, of course, do some research before, especially if about your users' needs, how you could fulfill that. But test and learn, that is so important. And that is a cultural thing. The other cultural thing I would say is to change in the editorial the focus on what is really good for an editor or a reporter in the career of his or her. I mean, traditionally it was really nice to have the top story on the front page. Then you were a star, or you had a good big byline or whatever. And to change that focus, that you are the top guy that people really pay for. Your story is so exciting that people pay for it, or you're such a good columnist. To change that kind of culture into the DNA of journalists, that of course always want to be read, also should focus on, yes, I want people to pay for it because my company's future is all about at least getting paid for our content. That kind of change in how the editorial part thinks about their storytelling and so on, that is another cultural change that many newspapers far, far away from that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I just want to say that we couldn't get to all of the questions that we had here, but we really appreciate it. But we have all your information, and we will try to get back to you with your questions. And if you have any additional questions, you can always send an email to webinars@WAN-IFRA.org. So I just want to say a big thank you to Kalle. Kalle, thanks for joining us. It was very insightful as always, and look forward to talking to you and seeing you here again soon, I hope, okay?
Thank you. It was a privilege, really.
And a big thank you also to our audience that are listening in from all over the world, literally. Thanks for being very attentive and interactive. And now just one last plug. We will have our next webinar on February 14th. Yes, that's Valentine's Day, I believe. So that's on a Wednesday. And it will be to talk about what publishers should think about Facebook's latest changes to newsfeed, what they can do, how they should respond. And that is with, of course, our platform guru, Grzegorz Piechota. Okay, everybody, thank you so much, and we hope to talk to you again soon, right here. Bye.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.